Hello, 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 you all. Hello, hello. Please hit the like and subscribe button when you come in the door. I appreciate it. I do, I do, I do. Well, everybody, it's a Sunday morning, and it just be stuff that's going on all the time with this Nolan Wells case. The cases that where the facts seem to come together fairly quickly. The timeline makes sense. The witness statements make sense. The physical evidence supports the explanation. And while a family may never fully heal the Nolan family specifically, Nolan Wells family specifically, at least they can understand what happened when things come together. Then there are cases like Nolan Wells, like his case, because the more we learn, the more difficult it becomes to fit all the pieces together. An 18-year-old young man leaves home to spend the 4th of July on the lake with people he considered his friends. By the next day, he's dead. Since then, we've heard different accounts of what happened on the island. We've seen questions raised about the investigation. We learned about concerns surrounding an autopsy. Now we've heard the 911 tape. We're about to hear it again. Most people expected that call to provide some clarity. Instead, for many, it created even more questions. Tonight, I'm not here in this dark here, so I'm not here to accuse anybody of anything. I'm here to ask the questions that many people are already asking. Because if the official explanation is correct, then every one of these questions should have an answer. And if some of these questions cannot be answered, then that deserves attention too. So we walk through it. So let's hear the 911 tape that I heard this week.
Assistant, Vicky speaking. How can I help you?
Hey, we're at the West Tip of Florence, and our village stopped working. We're thinking, can y'all please tell me we have a membership?
All right, of course. How far is the water coming up, sir? Can you give me a description? Ankles?
What did you
Hello?
say? Hey,
Is the yes? How far is the water coming up, sir?
it's going up. We're just thinking. I don't know. Like we're going down now.
All right, well let's get you going. Membership number or phone number listed on the account, sir.
I don't know the phone number. It's either Jerry Atkerson. I think it's Jerry Atkerson. Try that.
All right.
I know we have a membership, like guaranteed. I don't
All
have the
right.
tag
Unless
on
you
here.
have a
We got ripped
membership
off.
number or anything, it's okay. I'll get you over to the captain. What's the best phone number to reach you at?
Reach me at
All right. And is everybody on board in good health otherwise?
yeah. Everybody's
How
on
many?
board.
All right. Do you need the United States Coast Guard?
What?
Do you need the United States Coast Guard?
No, we do not need that.
All right. All right. Do you have your current GPS coordinates?
Let me go look.
If not, I can send you a text message.
North. Alright, are you ready?
Yes, sir. I'm available.
North, 3 degrees, 5.
See,
Detail
when you
assistant, Vicky speaking. How can I help?
so when you hear when you hear this 911 call, and anybody can gather the 911 call and hear the 911 call, there's clearly other things going on in the background, right? Clearly, to me, it clearly seems as though Nolan was on the boat with these people. He was on the boat with these people. Who knows what happened? Overdose, alcohol poisoning, anything, got into a fight. It could be any number of things. But it clearly somebody's calling Nolan's name on this 911 call. Someone's calling his name. Wake up, touch his chest. Our questions are the initial questions. Why would Nolan have stayed behind on the island? Let's start with that question that sits at the center of the entire case. Why? Why would Nolan willingly stay on an uninhabited island approximately 10 miles from shore, from home? According to his family, he had no boat, No transportation, no way to leave on his own. His phone wasn't with him. His keys weren't with him. His parents have publicly said that decision doesn't fit the son they knew. An 18-year-old who leaves their phone, that makes no sense. So what exactly happened on that island that led him to being separated from his friends? Did he make that choice voluntarily? Was there a misunderstanding? Was there an argument? Or is the timeline incomplete? Because until that question is answered, everything else becomes harder to understand. Did he or did he not leave with his boys? This 911 tapes gives us a little clarity. Somebody's calling Nolan's name on that boat. The name, if nothing else, the name is clear as day. If nothing else is clear that's being said in the background, that name, Nolan, is being said clearly, and that means he was on the boat when the boat started taking water on, or whatever, right? Why were Nolan's phones and keys somewhere else if he didn't get on the boat? One of the most puzzling details in this case involves Nolan's personal belongings. If Nolan was intentionally staying behind, why wasn't he in possession of the very things that would allow him to call for help or drive once he got back? How did somebody else end up with his phone? How did someone else end up with his keys? Did Nolan hand those over voluntarily? If so, why? And at what point did everyone realize they had left with Nolan's belongings? Did anybody attempt to return with those? Did anybody realize how serious that situation had become? Those aren't small details. Those are questions that go directly to what happened before the emergency began. If there was an emergency. If. Because we have to question whether there's an emergency. Why wasn't the emergency reported immediately? Another question people continue to ask is about timing. When did everyone realize Nolan was no longer with the group? If that's the case, was it immediately, minutes later, hours later? What conversations took place before anybody contacted emergency services? But here's the thing. When they called 911 because they said the bilge was taking on, or the boat was taking on water, they were on the northwest side of the island. Nolan's body washed up on the northwest side of the island. So at 4:31, when they made the emergency phone call, because they were taking on water, they were on that side of the island. They were on that side of the island. So how were you on that side of the island and nobody recognized Nolan on that side of the island? That was at 4:31, right? What conversations took place before anybody contacted that emergency services? If people believe Nolan was stranded on that island, why wasn't emergency services requested right then? Why wasn't the Coast Guard immediately notified if Nolan was lost? Why wasn't law enforcement immediately involved? Every minute mattered in a missing person's case. Every delay mattered. Understanding that timeline may be one of the most important parts of this entire conversation. Now, what exactly happened during that 911 and C-toll charge calls? According to that 911 call, I don't know who called, but the person called, I can't remember the name. The person called to get their boat towed. But in the background, clearly you hear someone calling Nolan's name. Now, if Nolan was not on the boat, why were you calling Nolan's name? Several times, the young person who called the boat people muted the phone call so that you could not hear the background. But what you did hear from the background, clearly you heard someone calling Nolan's name. So even if you took everything at its face value, why were you all calling Nolan's name while you were on the boat calling about a tow? Okay. Now we come to that recording. that people were waiting to hear. The release of the calls answered some questions, but they created even more. This 911 call created even more questions for me. During that CTO call, the caller reportedly indicates that everybody is okay and says they don't need the Coast Guard, but they wanted somebody to tow the boat. But come to find out, Grandpa, whoever's grandpa it was, Grandpa told the tow people not to tow the boat. They told them not to tow the boat. But they told them they didn't want the Coast Guard to show up. If that's accurate, what information did the caller have at that moment? What was happening on that boat? Who was making those decisions? And who decided outside emergency responders were not needed? Okay. Then there's the audio itself. I believe I heard voices in the background saying things like, wake up, check his chest, or asking if somebody was dead. Those are the things I think I heard. Other people heard other things, but I clearly heard them calling Nolan's name and saying, oh my God. Clearly calling Nolan's name and saying, oh my God. Audio can be difficult to interpret, but I'm hoping that there's a way to clear up the background. There's a way to clear up the tape so you can figure out what's said. I'm sure that there's some way to get that clear. Audio can be difficult to interpret, but we clearly heard Nolan's name. I can't say for sure anything else, but I heard Nolan's name. Someone call Nolan's name. Nolan! That's what we heard. Nolan! Okay? So if someone was calling Nolan's name, Nolan had to have been on that boat when they left that island. What happened between then and when they docked, who knows? The recordings is the most difficult thing to interpret. That's why these recordings deserve careful examination rather than assumption. I'm not assuming anything. I heard someone say Nolan. That's it. That's the only clear thing I could say that I heard. Nolan. Okay? But one thing is clear. We don't know what the rest of the tape said. People are asking whether what was said on the call matches what was happening in those moments. So why don't all the stories seem to match? One of the first things investigators do is compare witness statements. Not because people always lie, but because memories can change. And yet when major differences appear, investigators usually want to know why, which is what is happening here. We've heard different accounts about whether Nolan stayed behind, whether he left with Katie, went to talk to Katie. Katie said no. Katie said they were calling him to get on the boat. Different descriptions of where he was, different explanations of who saw him last, different timelines. If everybody experienced the same events, why don't all the stories line up the same way? What explains those differences? Memory, confusion, or something else? They were drunk. They had been drinking, right? So what do the boat movements mean? The boat movements. So we do have a contradiction in the boat movements as well. Questions have also been raised about the GPS data from the boat. Reports, GPS data indicate the boat returned towards the mainland and then later made additional movements in a different direction. So if that's accurate, if that GPS data is accurate, if we can rely on the GPS data, what happened during those trips, those sideline trips that were made that night? What happened during those trips? I thought you all said water was coming on the boat. I thought you all said the bilge pump was broke and water was coming on board. I thought that's what you all said. So how is it that water's coming on the boat and you're about to drown or whatever, and yet you go in different directions before you head for the mainland. Who was on board when that happened, and what were they doing? Were those movements related to the search for Nolan, or something completely unrelated? Who knows? GPS records often help investigators reconstruct timeline. So understanding those movements may be an important piece of understanding the entire evening. Okay? And we still have questions about the medical, about his body. Even after the release of the 911 call, medical questions remain about that. The family's independent experts have publicly discussed the reported lack of water in Nolan's lungs. Lack of water in Nolan's lungs. 9 times out of 10, that means a person didn't drown. I said 9 times out of 10 because I'm sure at 1 or 2 instances that happened and the person did drown. But 9 times out of 10, if a person doesn't have water in their lungs, that means they didn't drown. So if he didn't drown, that means he was on land or he was in a boat when he did drown, when he did die. Right? These medical experts discuss redness or discoloration observed on the back of his neck. They've discussed concerns involving anatomical structures retained during the initial autopsy. His neck, maybe his lungs, to confirm that he did or did not drown. The official manner of death remains under intense public discussion. How do all these medical findings fit together? Do they support that one explanation? Why did that sheriff come out and say it looked like an ordinary drowning when there's no water in Nolan's lungs? These are all questions for the medical expert. I get that. But they remain questions nonetheless, right? Y'all please hit the like and the subscribe button, please and thank you. I just like talking about weird shit like this. So why does it feel like every question is created by another? This is the biggest question, one of the biggest questions. Most investigations become clearer over time. And you know why it was not clear? It's because the children hid evidence, or they hid what they knew from the beginning. They lawyered up. Every new document, every interview, every recording, every press conference generates another layer of questions or uncertainty. That doesn't automatically mean there's wrongdoing, but it does explain why this case continues to attract so much attention, because people naturally expect the evidence to fit together. And right now, there's pieces that don't fit. How do we jump from Nolan wanting to stay on the island to Nolan being dead? How do we jump from Nolan's friend saying he wanted to stay on the island, and then Katie saying no, he didn't, that they encouraged him to come off the island? How do you make that jump? And then there's one of the most important questions that presented itself when the 911 call came out. And then there are the questions, in my opinion, may be one of the most important questions. Let's talk about the grandfather. According to the recordings that have been released, he became involved before Sea Tow was ever dispatched. He became involved before the tow people were ever involved. So that raises a simple question. Who called Grandpa? Who would have called Grandpa just for... This is what I'm saying to y'all. These kids are used to being on boats. So they understand their parents, grandparents, or whatever have trained them to be on boats. If this happens, go here. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. So who called Grandpa and why? When did he become aware of the boat taking water on? If there was water that was being taken on, because you all didn't go directly to the mainland. You didn't go directly to the mainland. You made it to the mainland after you did several side trips. Then you made it to mainland. Then you had it towed. So after you did side trips, you made it to the mainland. See, what exactly was Grandpa told? Because if the kids reached out to him before they reached out for outside help, that becomes part of the timeline investigators should understand. Then there's another question. Why, according to the released recordings, was Cito operator told not to worry about taking on water, that they didn't need the Coast Guard? Why would you do that? Why would you call 911 anyway? Why would you need to call 911 anyway? If you weren't concerned about being the boat, you drowning. If you weren't concerned about the boat going underwater, well, you were, but you weren't really. Not really. You weren't frantic. Only the people that were in the background of that video of that phone call were frantic. He didn't seem to be frantic. He seemed to be muting the button, muting the phone, and talking. Because they were talking, the people in the background were saying what they were saying over top of the operator. Okay? If there was any possibility that somebody was in the water, why decline additional emergency resources? Why didn't you, if what it sounds like is Nolan was on the boat. Somebody called his name. He was not responding to whatever. He was not responding. He wasn't saying anything. Touch his chest. Get the fuck up. Wake up, Nolan. These are the things that supposedly occurred inside of. I can't totally hear that, but I can totally hear somebody calling Nolan's name. Okay. Why didn't they call 911 operator? Why didn't they call 911 for their friend if he was in the boat? What information did they give to Grandpa at that moment that caused him to believe outside assistance wasn't necessary? Did he know Nolan was no longer in the water? If so, how? Who told him? When? These questions matter because every decision made during an emergency has consequence. Another question, if Nolan was last known to be on the boat, how did the story become that he was left behind on the island? How did y'all come up with that story if what I believe is true? I believe he was on the boat with y'all. Not saying y'all did anything. He could have overdosed. He could have fell and hit his head. Any number of things. Why didn't y'all just call 911 when these things occurred? If you were innocent of doing anything. If you were innocent of doing anything and Nolan just failed, or Nolan just had, he just overdosed or whatever, why didn't you all call 911? Because it sounds to me like Nolan was on the boat and something happened on the boat. What? Don't know. But clearly you guys wanted to cover up what happened. Clearly you guys wanted to cover that up. Who came up with the story that say y'all left him behind on the island? Just say that. When did this transition occur? Who first said Nolan had remained on the island? Who verified it? Who actually saw him there last? Nolan had to have left the island. Don't y'all get it? He had to have left the island. Otherwise, he would have been seen by other people before they left. By the last person that was there, he would have been seen by somebody. So he got into the boat with somebody. I'm assuming he got in the boat with his friends. He got into the boat with his friends. And when he got into the boat with his friends, something happened while they were on their way back. Something happened. They got drunk. They started doing horseplay. They started punching each other or arguing or whatever they decided whatever was happening. Because understanding how Nolan went from being on a boat to allegedly remaining on an uninhabited island may be one of the most critical pieces of the entire investigation. Finally, there's a broader question that I don't think is going to go away. Even if investigators were to determine that no one intentionally harmed Nolan, and that's a big possibility, that nobody did anything and he just had a heart attack, he overdosed, he got alcohol poisoning, he hit his head, it could have been any number of things. Even if investigators were to determine that no one intentionally harmed that boy, what responsibility did the people with him have for his safety? If you're spending the day on the water with your friends, everybody shares a responsibility to make sure everybody comes home. If somebody is left behind, if somebody is separated from a group, if somebody dies during that outing, people naturally ask whether different decisions could have changed that outcome. Those aren't accusations. They're the kind of questions that serious investigators are supposed to answer. Why is it that even if y'all didn't have nothing to do with his death, and he was on the boat, y'all got scared, y'all was scared, y'all something happened to him, and y'all tossed him overboard because y'all was scared? What kind of duty did y'all have for y'all friend? What kind of duty did you have for your friend? Okay. The 911 call, the 911 tape, clearly you can hear somebody calling Nolan's name. That's all I'm going to commit to, is that I heard them call Nolan's name on that tape. Clear as day. Nolan! Somebody called his name. He could have been in the water. He could have been on the boat. But they definitely saw him after 4:30. They said they never saw him after 3 o'clock because they left him with Katie. But they clearly saw him after 4:30, after they made that 911 call. And clearly, this case is not just about Nolan. It's about everything that happened before his death and everything that happened afterward. An 18-year-old boy went out on the lake with people who were supposed to be his friends. He didn't come home. His family has spent these past couple of weeks searching for answers. The public has spent the past couple of weeks trying to understand a timeline that still contains unanswered questions. Maybe every one of these questions has a reasonable explanation. Maybe it does. If that's true, then those explanations should be supported by evidence. Clearly, listen to the 911 tape. Listen to the 911 tape. Wait a minute, I got another one. Hold on. I got another tape. I can't make out Jack, right? So only thing I can hear is Nolan's voice. I know somebody calling Nolan's name. That's the only thing I can hear.
The boys called about the tow truck. The tow in the boat. And it was a frantic call, but you can hear Nolan or some things being said about Nolan. But before I play that, what people are tripping about that picture, it appears to be Nolan's leg hanging off. So now that you see Nolan's leg hanging off,
did y'all see that? Y'all see that?
It appears to be
Nolan's leg hanging off the boat. Nolan's leg hanging off the boat.
Nolan's leg hanging off. So now that you see Nolan's leg hanging off, now I need you to listen to this audio. Now I'll tell you what I hear. I want you to tell me what you hear. Is he dead? Nolan, oh my God, Nolan, don't die. Wake up, it's all kind of stuff. Now, allegedly, that's warned when they called the boy.
So I can't really tell. The only thing I heard was Nolan. That's the only thing I heard. Okay. But the family deserves those answers. They deserve those answers. Okay. But the thing is, if this was the case, if he was on board with you guys, why didn't you guys call 911 to help save Nolan? If you all never did anything, you didn't touch him, he fell overboard and y'all got him out of the water, you pulled him out of the water and he wasn't breathing, and he was on board, and y'all called his name, and then y'all tried to call 911, and then Grandpa told y'all not to call 911, but y'all called anyway, but you end up saying you didn't need any help. All different kinds of scenarios. Even if that was the case, and you guys knew what happened to your friend, but you had nothing to do with it, why didn't y'all call 911 to help save y'all friend? Why didn't y'all call 911 so somebody can come get your friend? Why was it reckless disregard for your friend? Okay. People have to continue to ask these questions. Okay. Continue to ask these questions because there's questions to be asked. No 18-year-old just ups and disappears off an island by themselves without no explanation, and nobody knows what happened to them. That just doesn't work. That don't even make sense to normal, rational people. Everybody knows an 18-year-old is glued to their phone. They glued to their phone. But he says, leave me on this island without my phone, without my key. Leave me on this island. That doesn't make sense. And the fact that there was a 911 call and they're screaming Nolan's name and saying other things, that makes no sense. So we're going to keep up with this story. I don't know. I don't know what happened. Personally, I think maybe y'all saw him overdose. Maybe y'all saw this man overdose and you guys didn't know what to do and you panicked and you just didn't know what to do. That might be a more plausible explanation for anything. But the thing is, you put yourself in more hot water because you didn't report it to the police. And they had to wait until 11 o'clock at night for the mom to put the police onto her son being missing. The mom had to do it. Why you guys didn't do it? Why didn't you guys say, oh shit, we left Nolan? Even if y'all left Nolan on out, like y'all said, why didn't y'all call for your friend after y'all came from the island at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock? Why didn't y'all look for your friend? Why didn't y'all say anything about your friend? Why didn't y'all go looking for your friend? These are the questions that don't make sense. People keep saying, oh, well, no, they didn't do anything. Nothing happened. No, these kids know something. They know something. I'm not saying anything about what they did or they didn't do. I'm leaning more towards he maybe had an overdose, or maybe he hit his head, or maybe he went in the water and he had a seizure, or I'm leaning towards any of those things. Because you would have to be a depraved human being in order to end the life of your friend. And I'm not quite willing to call people depraved human beings at this point in this scenario. That could be the case. It could be the case. I don't know. But I'm not willing to say that right now. What I am willing to say is you all know what happened to your friend. And at the minimum, bare minimum, you were derelict in your duty to your friend. I'm willing to say that. You guys were derelict in your duty to your friend. Okay. Please hit the like and share and subscribe. I appreciate if you're looking at the content, I appreciate the like and the share. Or the like and the subscribe. So let me read some of the comments in the comment section. Hello. Hey, Steelmatic, Honda, G Honda. Yeah, justice for Nolan. You people are pathetic. No, nobody's pathetic. People are asking questions about what happened. Okay? Hit the like button. I appreciate all that. You are so far behind. Tons of evidence has come out. What tons of evidence, Goofy? We don't know any evidence. The only thing that's come out is a 911 call. No, there's plenty of evidence. I get that. But some of that evidence is irrelevant until they answer the timeline question. Most of it is irrelevant until you answer the timeline. We get where it's at. We get that. Saw him at different times. Different people saw him at different times. That's not odd. Some people see him at 3. Some people say, yes, of course. Anyway, what she was saying. The whole point is the friends know something. The inbred piglets found the they know something. Nobody said that but you. Cause I keep thinking about it. I'm not doing any research on it. I can just read the timeline. The timelines don't match up. Okay. I think the idiots tried to capsize the boat as a form of plausible deniability. That's the piggy. Hey, anything could have anything could be true. We don't know. Brandon Tatum debunked all the lies. What lies did anybody tell? Nobody told any lie. Nobody has said anything. All the friends, all the people that were there are the only people that have stories. Nobody else has any stories. So that makes no sense. There's no lies to be debunked. That makes no sense. There's no lies to be debunked because nobody. Hey, Joe, not. Hey. There's no reason to say X, Y, and Z. Nobody has accused X, Y, and Z of anything. I personally believe they know something. Okay, they know something. Those boys know something. He wanted to stay behind on a barren, empty island. That don't even make sense. And he's the only person in an island of piglets. That makes no sense. Okay, he didn't want to stay alone on that island. I believe they know what happened. Something happened on that boat. It just was what it was. And they'll figure it out. The police can figure it out. Not as the 911 tape comes. See, what should happen is this. The FBI, independent forensic people who know how to lift voices off of tape, who know how to enhance voices on tape, those people should be attacking that 911 call to get those background noises, to get those background voices. And if we don't know anything, we can find out if Nolan was on the boat with them. Him being on the boat doesn't mean that they killed him. But if he was on the boat, that means they know what happened to him. And at the minimum to me is they're covering up the fact that they knew where he died and when he died. This is the minimum. I'm willing to give them that. They know how he died. They know he was on the boat when he died. I'm willing to give you that. I'm not willing to give you the fact that maybe he killed him or they didn't kill. I don't know any of those things. I do know that they know what happened to that boy. Somehow, some way, they know what happened. And we just got to wait it out. We just got to find out, if you're really an investigator, if you're really one of those people that want to find. So it has nothing to do. See, this 911 tape should blow the whole thing out of the water, because the 911 tape has the voices on it, and you can get that 911 tape and you can have it analyzed by 10, 20, 30 people. And if 10, 20, 30 people come up with the same analysis that they were calling Nolan's name in the background, and they said X, Y, and Z, then you have yourself a case. You have a self of murder. Okay. Or at the least a cover-up of a death. You at least have that. So that's all I'm saying. Get the tape analyzed. See if you can lift the voices up. I don't know how any of that works. But you get it analyzed by 5, 10 different people who know how to lift things off of, know how to lift voices louder on a tape, and see what all of them come up independently. If they all come up with the same thing, that the tape said the same thing, then you have yourself a case. Then we know that Nolan was on that boat, and they lied about Nolan being on the boat. See, it's simple. Find out if he was on the boat. Why is he out there hugging on them and going on boating trips? Because they're his friends. What do you mean? Why would you ask that question? Why are you asking that question? That's a dumb question. Because he's friends with them. That's why he's out there hugging them and going on boat trips. What do you mean? What does that mean? I don't know what you mean. Okay. It was gay guys. So, who cares whether they were gay guys or not? I'm not gay. I don't care about what gay people do. Who cares? What do you mean? That makes no sense. So I appreciate, so after hugging him, hanging, out with him, they killed him. So after hugging them and hanging out with them, they killed him. I don't know. There's depraved human beings all over this planet. There's depraved human beings all over this planet. Just because they're white doesn't mean that they didn't do it. That's the whole point. The whole point is to follow the facts. The 911 tape should be analyzed by several people. And if that 911 tape comes back where they can lift the voices off and they're calling Nolan's name, yeah, sure. Shut up, Frank. You make no sense. You make absolutely no sense because you ask the dumb questions. But anyway, we will keep our eye on this case. We will keep our eye on whoever analyzes the tape. If you can analyze the tape, because there's a lot of people running around talking about he said this, they said this, they said that. I can't really tell. The only thing I can tell is that they called Nolan's name. And that could have meant that he was in the water. It could have meant he was on a boat. I don't know. So there's experts that, there's experts that can come up with the real deal. So let the experts come up with the real deal. But if the 911 tape is true and the 911 tape is clear with the name Nolan, that means that he was on that boat. So they have more explanation to do. But besides, on top of the fact that they lawyered up, they cut off their social media, all of those things make this suspicious. If nothing else, they should have dug into their life and dug into that 911 call, dug into the fact that they circled back into that boat. Even when the boat was supposedly taking on water, they still went to another place, another direction before they went to the dock. So those things need to be looked into. But please, I appreciate all of you showing up this early in the morning. I just wanted to get that out. Even though it's already been out, I still wanted to take on that because this is weighing heavily on the public and just young guys. I believe I heard the name Nolan on the tape. So that's all I heard. I didn't hear anything else. At the bare minimum, Nolan was on that boat. How long he was on the boat, when he was on the boat, after he died, before he died, when he was dying, we don't know. We don't know how he died, when he died, at the hands of if he died, overdose, any number of things could have happened. But we're going to find out. And I appreciate you guys showing up. I appreciate you guys showing up. I do.